The lights inside the grocery store flickered as the last employee clocked out. It was past closing time, and the street was quiet, except for the dull hum of distant traffic and the occasional bark of a dog from a nearby backyard. Sarah Thompson, a single mother in her late 20s, wiped her bruised arm on her uniform sleeve and picked up a bag of what was officially labeled expired goods. To most, the contents were worthless: overripe bananas, dented cans, day-old bread. But to Sarah, it was survival. She glanced over her shoulder before slipping the bag into her purse. She hadn't stolen it. Not exactly. These were items meant for disposal, but company policy said employees weren't allowed to take anything home. Sarah had broken that rule 3 times this week. She didn't do it for herself. She did it for Charlie, her 6-year-old son waiting at home in their small, crumbling apartment. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in 2 days, but tonight, her only concern was making sure Charlie had something, anything, in his belly. What she didn't know was that someone had seen her. Standing in the shadows near the staff parking lot, wearing a beige coat and quiet shoes, William Carter watched. He was in his early 70s, silver-haired, sharp-eyed, and completely out of place at a grocery store in the middle of the night. But William wasn't a stranger. He was the owner, the founder and CEO of Harvest Mart, the grocery chain where Sarah worked. He was a billionaire, one of the quiet ones, rarely seen, rarely heard. Tonight, he had come unannounced, curious to understand why his company's profits were shrinking despite record sales. What he discovered instead would change his life. When William saw Sarah take the expired food, he didn't feel anger. He felt confusion, intrigue. Why would a young mother, clearly injured, risk her job over a bag of tossed-out food? So he followed her. From a safe distance, he watched as she walked block after block, past streetlights and shuttered houses, through a neighborhood that had seen better days. She didn't notice him. She was too focused, too determined. Eventually, she turned down a narrow sidewalk, past a trash-littered lawn and a cracked concrete porch, and approached the door of a weathered old building. William stopped on the opposite side of the street, watching as Sarah knocked softly, then opened the door. And then he saw it. A little boy, no more than 6 years old, rushed out and threw his arms around her waist. His red t-shirt was faded, his shoes too small, his cheeks hollow, but his eyes lit up when he saw the plastic bag in her hand. "You got food?" Charlie asked, voice hopeful. Sarah smiled through her exhaustion and nodded. "I told you I'd find something, baby." She knelt down, bruised arm shaking, and handed him the bag. Charlie's face lit up like it was Christmas morning. William watched, unmoving, something twisted deep in his chest. This wasn't a thief. This was a mother trying to keep her child alive. He noticed the dried blood and scratch marks on her arms, old injuries, some fresh. He noticed the cracked paint on the wall, the broken porch light, the trash that hadn't been picked up in weeks. This wasn't a home, it was a shelter made of desperation. And he was the one at the top of the empire that employed her. The same company whose policies forbade workers from taking expired food. The same company where she earned just enough to stay poor. William didn't sleep that night. Instead, he stayed up reading everything he could find on Sarah Thompson. Her file said she was punctual, respectful, kept to herself. No disciplinary reports. But it didn't mention that she had dropped out of nursing school to care for her dying mother. It didn't mention that her ex-husband had disappeared 2 years ago, leaving her with debt and a baby. It didn't mention that she had been walking 4 miles to work every day to save on bus fare. So the next morning, William made a decision. Sarah arrived at work, expecting to be fired. She had seen the motion sensor light flicker behind her the night before. She knew someone had followed her. But instead of being met by her manager, she was greeted by a company car. "We've been instructed to bring you to headquarters," the driver said. Her heart dropped. At the towering glass building downtown, she was led to the top floor. Every step felt heavier than the last. She was terrified. She knew she couldn't afford to lose this job. Then she stepped into a room and saw William Carter standing at the window. He turned slowly and offered a soft smile. "Sarah, I owe you an apology." She blinked. "Sir, I didn't mean to steal." "You didn't steal," he interrupted gently. "You saved your son, I saw everything." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't speak. William walked over, holding a folder. "This is a full-time position at our headquarters, Community Outreach Coordinator. It pays 3 times what you're making now, health benefits, a flexible schedule, and daycare for Charlie." Sarah stared at him, completely stunned. "And this," he added, holding up a key, "is to a 2-bedroom apartment, rent-free for a year, fully furnished, safe neighborhood, all expenses covered by our foundation." She couldn't breathe. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you doing this?" William's voice cracked just slightly. "Because 35 years ago, I had a mother who worked 2 jobs and still went to bed hungry. Because I built this company to make life better for families, and somewhere along the way, I forgot what that meant. You reminded me." Tears slipped down Sarah's cheeks. Her hands shook as she reached for the key. That evening, for the first time in months, Sarah and Charlie sat down in a warm home with clean floors, fresh groceries, and hope. Charlie ate until he was full, then fell asleep in his own bed, something he hadn't had since his grandmother died. Sarah stood by the window, watching the city lights, overwhelmed by gratitude. And William, he returned to his office with a new mission. He rewrote company policies, donated millions to employee housing programs, created a fund for single parents, and every month he had dinner with Sarah and Charlie, not as their boss, but as someone who had once been hungry too. Because sometimes the most powerful changes don't start in boardrooms. They start on a sidewalk, under a broken light, where a little boy reaches out with hope. And a billionaire remembers what it means to be human.